Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of Season Ticket Holders. I'm your host, Dane Lillingstone, and I have a returning guest for us today. She is the NRL Tonight producer extraordinaire, Cronulla Sharks member, Blues fan, and number one Craig Fitzgibbon fan, Louise Abihanna. How are you going?
Said like a true Bronco Queenslander. Where else should we go with your titles?
No, I was ready for this, so I have a little thing for you. Here we go. Queenslander. I'll put the scarf for listening to
He has
audio.
props. He
I do
has
have the
props.
Queensland scarf. I don't know if I need to wear. Oh, you know what? It's Origin.
That's it. It's there now. Yeah.
I'll keep it on. Now, Lou, you were the one who came to me with the idea for this podcast, and I really liked it. You thought it'd be a good idea for us as media people to have a chat about what it's like to cover State of Origin. Obviously, the series just wrapped up, so I do just want to get into that first. But Queensland, the unlosable series again, the dynasty was all going to happen after game one. What did you just make of that decider? Even as Queenslanders, I think we were pretty shocked just at the result and how dominant they were. What did you make of last night's result?
Yeah, it's funny. It's sort of been all we've been talking about sort of all day in the office and unpacking it all. I think my biggest shock will be what Laurie Daly said today. So this morning when he was coming outside the hotel, he did his little press conference and he said what disappointed him the most was what he saw in that first 20 minutes. For me, I wasn't shocked. I think it's really hard to have three players, well, two for the most part of a campaign, be injured and not train with majority of the team. And we're not talking two players who are in the same role, so someone just fills in and then the rest of the team are the same. We're talking two players who are in different roles. So we had a winger, we had a front rower. At some stages, we had edge forwards in Hudson Young on the sideline. And I think that's what I took out from that. I think to a certain extent, the Blues had to be underprepared for that match yesterday. And I think it's hard to say they couldn't have been when you had two players not training pretty much the whole time and up to, 5 or 6 throughout the 10 days not participating in a game. I think we lost that momentum in game 2 when we really had that chance to wrap the series up in Perth and call it the Queensland spirit, if we will.
We will.
You always knew they were going to come out with a fight last night, and they sure as hell did.
You make a good point. No one really spoke about the injuries too much today from the wash-up, from everything that I saw. But obviously you talked about Brian To'o with the knee, Payne Haas with the back. He did say he'd been dealing with it all series, but I was out the Blue Mountains covering them. They really didn't train at all. I think they maybe took part in a bit of the captain's run. And Brian To'o, even though he was still one of the Blues' best, just watching the game last night, I did think he was behind a little bit. With Payne Haas, you know always what you're going to get. And then with Queensland, I think for me, Tom Dearden changed the series. I think Billy Slater making that call to drop Daly Cherry Evans, one of the biggest calls in Origin history. Billy Slater could have went down as a villain if that all backfired. He didn't. Tom Dearden did a really good job in game 2, and then man of the match, man of the series, the game of his life. To win that decider, absolutely incredible. And I bet on Queensland 1-12, so I was very happy that New South Wales just tiny. I needed that conversion at the end just to get the bet in, so I was very happy with that. But it is one of those classic Queensland victories we talked about, and I know from being in the office with all you New South Wales supporters today, it was a tough one to swallow, because on paper, the Blues should have had this series again, right? And it just didn't come together.
Definitely. It was, like you said, it was the series that New South Wales should have won. What happened in game 1, the way it was set up, we went in with, we went into last night's or Wednesday night's game with an unchanged 1-17. So if you talk about connection, you talk about continuity, you talk about all those things, New South Wales should have had it 100%. There was no reason that Queensland should have won that game last night. But I suppose a lot of stuff happened during the week, which I'm sure we'll get into, that really galvanised that Queensland squad. And you could tell last night was probably a little bit more than a footy match for them. And I think that may be what got them over in the end.
Yes, you're right. And that Cameron Munster's father, very sadly, over the weekend passed away. And I was at the Queensland Hotel in Parramatta Thursday morning. And I think Tino Fasuamala-Aui spoke well on it, that they did come together Josh Kerr revealed that when he was away, Harry Grant sort of stepped up and he was the one who pulled the group together and spoke about it openly with Cameron Munster and said, we don't need to tell you how much you mean to us and how much it means to us, but we're going to go out there and show you. And I think that's exactly what they did on Wednesday night. So another series done and dusted. And for us as media, that sort of caps, I'd say, the busiest, as rugby league media, the busiest sort of 2 months, you'd have to say, of our years, right? It's crazy, it's full on. Obviously, you're running a show, 5 nights a week with rugby league content, but you've still got to fit in clubland stuff. I'm doing 90-minute drives up to the Blue Mountains to cover the Blues training. Like, it is intense days, but it's all very well worth it. I guess just for you, do you want to just talk to us about what it is like? I remember last time you were on, you talked about your role for NRL Tonight, but what's it like for you trying to put together these origin shows from a media point of view at this time of year?
Yeah, you're right. This sort of 6-week block is the most chaotic of it all, because you've got Origin, which is so much more than just the 10 days between a team announced to the game, which is what people mainly think it is. There's those 2 rounds in between that we're watching for every suspension, every injury, any little impact it's going to have leading up to when that team is named. But then you've also got big clubland news, like regular NRL news does not sleep. And there's been breaking news consistently throughout this entire Origin campaign. You know, you've got Lockie Galvin signing with the Bulldogs, and you've got more drama at the West Tigers in terms of juniors leaving and Benji Marshall in the headlines and whatever you want to call it. So it really is chaotic if you look at it just from a standard show point. But then you add in those Origin Wednesdays and they are a whole different kettle of fish. I underestimated how much goes into one hour show, despite previous jobs. I used to work at Sky News before working here, and my role there was to produce a 2-hour program every single day. And that felt like nothing. And then it's funny, you do an hour show, which is only half an hour extra than what you do on a normal night, and 1 hour less than something that I was so used to. But when it's one specific thing that you're focusing on, it really does take a lot of planning. We've got to speak to all the media managers. We've got to have everything in check. And it's so much more than just the team as well. It's so much more than just the current players or the current squads. You've got to think former players you're going to get on, what story they're going to offer, what storyline you want to have. So NRL Tonight were doing Origin specials. They were an hour show, 6 till 7. It was a 2-host production, and you need to also keep in mind that we are a broadcaster, so everything has to be balanced. So for every New South Wales guest I have on, I've got to make sure I've got a Queensland guest on the other side. And it's also got to be something that's fun and is a little bit different to what you're doing the other 5 nights a week. So I'm thinking, okay, what little packages are we going to create, or what are little highlight reels that we're going to show to add to the creativity of the show. And I'm sure we're going to get into, as you said, a bit later on, what we did last night. But you're always thinking how you're going to fit all the content in. And there are some days where it might seem like a really easy day and like the story is going to be a bit of a nuffy, and then something could drop. And before you know it, you've got the biggest news there. And I mean, you were there the day that happened with New South Wales in Game 2 when Mitch Moses was
Big day.
Suddenly ruled out. And I remember, and it's nothing against the players that were up, but from memory it was Hudson Young and Reece Robson, is that right? That were doing media that day?
Yep.
And nothing against those players. Of course, there's storylines within every person. But to us media, that was just meant to be a standard Blue Mountains trip for Dane. He was going to head up to training, watch a little bit of training, and then listen to his 2 pressers, which we weren't expecting anything groundbreaking from, come back, finish his package, and then before we know it, Frank Manisi's at the top of the press conference, and it's utter chaos. So I think that day is the perfect example of how Origin literally is a different ball game.
And then I couldn't even get my pie that day. So
he didn't. He came back very hungry.
Yeah, and I get hangry. I get hangry. Trust me. I can tell you. Mountain High Pies. Shout out Wentworth Falls. Do a very good job. I hope I get a plug and a sponsor. But you are right, Lou, and it is that crazy time of year. Looking back on this series, and like you mentioned, some of those trips, and I wanted to get into it. If you just had to look back now, and can you choose like a highlight from covering this Origin series, or is there just one moment you think that defined it or really stood out for you?
In terms of the show or in terms of like
I suppose both with the show and then with you having to work or the news of the show into it.
yeah, I would say the show would definitely have been last night's show. I know we're going to get into it, but yeah, we were out there at a core stadium, and that was a really, really cool special experience. But I would say a day covering it would have to be that Mitch Moses day. It was just, um, I don't know, some of your listeners, I know are fellow colleagues or fellow media people as well, and they know what it's like to be in a newsroom and breaking news happens. And that was just one of those moments. It was like everything else just stopped. And that's exactly what we needed to focus on, the Mitch Moses news. And it just felt like, now also seeing how the series has unfolded, it really felt like the penny dropping moment.
You're right, and it was a massive, massive turning point. I already spoke about it in a previous podcast, but I think New South Wales losing Mitch Moses, it was a big blow, but it didn't probably get the attention it deserved in hindsight because
Yeah.
having Cleary and Moses together, that's New South Wales' best halves pairing. I mean, arguable after last night, but at the time, that was the best halves pairing. They got the job done in game one, and having those two long kicking games to either side of the field really opens up your whole team. And Jerome Luai, we saw he had some real missteps with his kicking in those final
Yeah.
two games. But I do remember exactly the day Frank Panisi, team manager, comes out. We didn't really know what was going on. We'd watched Mitch Moses train just about an hour prior. And then the fact that he's ruled out, we all knew straight away this is the news of the day, if not the week. Big deferring moment of the series. And then you're right, everything goes out the door. I think we were talking to Reece Robson. I had some cool stat about how he did like 50 tackles and no misses in game one or something like that. And, trying to actually do like a nice sports angle for once. But of course, news like this always takes precedence. And we all know that. That's just sort of the nature of the beast. And that's what happens. And that was a massive day. And I really did miss my pie. But it's like that, isn't it, Lou? That's just like the stress of the show. You've mentioned it a few times now, but let's just get into it because your highlight personally, you got to go and actually do your show live from a core stadium Wednesday night, which is something we don't normally do. For NRL Tonight, Fox Sports News, that type of thing. Just talk us through that experience. And I know there was a lot that went into it, even just to get the okay and that type of thing, to get it all going ahead. But what was that like for you?
Yeah, exactly. Just like you said. So, the broadcast rights is really your first challenge because yourself, Codes, Bristow, all you journos who go inside, you're obviously able to go to the sheds post match and have your chats there. But in terms of doing a full production and a full show, we're not allowed inside the stadium. So your first element and your first challenge is where are we going to give NRL Tonight the presence of being at State of Origin, especially a decider, but with all the challenges. You've got the chance of it raining. You've got drunk people who are on a high who are heading to, some of them the best sporting moment of their lives.
Very drunk.
And you've got wires, electrical equipment. You're trying to mix everything into one. So very luckily we were able to secure a spot at Sydney Olympic Park with their help as well in a picturesque location, had the stadium in the background. It was lit beautifully. So we were able to secure that. And then our next sort of battle was like a sponsorship approval because our show is sponsored on Origin nights. So we needed to get that all approved, and we did. So eventually we're off and running. We were heading to Olympic Park for the Origin decider, which was really exciting. But then it's also how are we going to make sure we have a presence while we're there without just being there. So it's all well and good for host Maddie Russell and Eloise Sawyer, who did an amazing job last night, might I add, to be there and to be at the stadium. But it then is a bit redundant if we're crossing back to guests who are via Zoom or, in different locations. So then you have to start thinking, who are we going to get on the show who has Origin relevance? And Origin relevance doesn't have to be that you've played 20 State of Origins or that you've won 10 series, but who has a real storyline? So we had the likes of Josh Reynolds, that 2014 AE dynasty over moment.
Heartbreaking. But an amazing moment as well. Him and Trent Hodkinson, who would have thought?
Exactly. So we had him on. Then we had someone who, probably goes a little bit under the radar, but Ben Hannett, he played, I think it was 12 Origin matches for Queensland, and he played during that dynasty stint. And then we had a beloved NRL Tonight guest, Timmy Manor, who's just an all-round legend.
He is so nice, that guy.
So nice. And again, each one of them had an origin story. So you instantly then go to, how do we piece all this entire show together and really have a presence? So eventually it all came together with lots of hard work and quite a few hours. But yeah, it was really cool, and it was really it was a really special experience, I suppose, to be out there because it's just not something that everyone gets to do. Like you said, it's very rare that you're able to take a show out on the road and do an entire hour broadcast out from somewhere. So, yeah, we were really lucky last night.
You didn't say my favourite part, which is when Cody Kay had his beanie stolen off his head, which I wish I haven't seen the clip, but
I'll
that's
send it to you and you can insert it in here.
I will. I'd love to. So that's obviously a part of what we do, doing those live crosses, and
Yeah.
it's always a little bit hairy because you never know with live TV, as you know, what's going to happen. I've never really had anything crazy personally happen to me, but people are known to flash, get certain
Yeah.
body parts out, all that type of things. That's something we always have to be mindful of. And like you said, Origin does bring out the drunk people. I know if I was a fan, I would start drinking at 3 p.m. if I could. Like that's just part of Origin for me. But yeah, I want to get into then, I suppose, tying it into what I do as well, because
Yeah.
I get to go to the sheds and I'm very privileged to be able to do that and then be at the hotel. So my job is, you see what I do at the live crosses, but I got to go into the sheds after game 2 into Queensland after they'd pulled off that win and just hold on. And I've done it a couple of times now, but you still sort of have to pinch yourself when you're standing there. You've just watched an Origin game, as any little kid's dream would be, to be exactly where you are in the inner sanctum of a State of Origin team that I've grown up following, loving my whole entire life. And to talk to the players, I got to speak to Kalen Ponga and Harry Grant and Cameron Munster after he'd just won man of the match in his first game as captaincy. And it's something really special that we get to do. And then obviously we get to turn those one-on-ones, which Fox Sports is lucky that we do get access into them, into nice stories, right? And we get to turn them around. We try and keep them short to keep them as engaging as possible. Obviously, in all honesty, some players are going to have better stories than others. Not everyone's going to give you a great few minutes of content or interview or insights. I can understand too, some of them are just busted after 80 minutes. They just want to go have a beer and relax with their family. They're probably not really in the mood to talk to media, nor some of them just aren't the great speakers, and that's just natural, and that's just the way it is.
Yeah.
And then the flip side for me is going to the hotels in the morning. Now, I can tell you the inside of this morning, which was very fun. If no one's seen Josh Kerr give an interview, obviously he was on the extended side, didn't get into the starting team in the 17, but gave the all-time interview of the series, I would say. Basically reviewed, didn't it? Like, everyone should go and watch that. It's on foxsports.com.au. Go and check it out. He revealed that he left at 3, but a lot of the players were still out in the group chat from what he saw. My favourite part was that Alfie Langer brought out a tray of Sambuca shots. Apparently he did the drunk eyes to Kerr and said, "Curry, it's your birthday." And he goes, "No, that's Reece Walsh." And then he also had a big dig at Ashley Klein, and said that he was a double agent and that he believes that he tried to keep New South Wales in the game by giving away some decisions. And he did acknowledge, maybe I'm going to get into trouble. So that's probably one to watch in the next couple of days. I hope he doesn't, because it was meant in tongue in cheek, but I'm sure the NRL...
I agree.
Yeah, but I'm sure the NRL doesn't find it funny, nor would Ashley Klein. But it is what it is. And he said, "I'm probably revealing too much." And he said that about 10 times while continuing to tell us more and more each time. He said there was some spew involved too. So he didn't say any names, but we also spoke to Ruben Cotter just before they all got in the team bus at their hotel in Parramatta. And I followed up with a question. He said, it's been a big celebration. I said, "What time did you get home?" And this was about, I think, 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning. And he said, "I just got home." So there you go. So they celebrated. If you got Ruben Cotter in your Supercoach this weekend, maybe be careful.
Yes.
But it is fun. And that's sort of, I guess, an insight of what we get to do. And we are very lucky, right, Lou, to be able to do these things.
Definitely.
And but the challenge that presents to is putting that into content. I know my story was 3.5 minutes today, trying to fit 2 teams of things. So we got all this content. Is that a challenge too? Just trying to get, I suppose, the best content out there for the audience?
For sure. And I think the hard thing is we're wrapped up in it every single day, whether it's Origin World or whether it's just normal clubland stuff, no matter what it is. Like, there are days that sometimes I listen to 10 press conferences in a day of 10 different clubs, whether that's a coach, multiple players, or what it is. So I don't know if you feel the same, but when you listen to it all the time, you think everything is great. So,
yeah, that's true.
Yeah, Josh Kerr gave the best interview today. So you could have used all of him, but then Val Holmes, in hindsight, may have only given one good answer that went for 20 seconds. But because we're so wrapped up in it, sometimes it's so hard to think of what the best content actually is. And I think one thing that our team do really, really well is we'll all listen, and so many times we'll then just say, "Hey guys, I've just finished listening to, let's say, Josh Kerr. He said A, B, C, D. What do you think would be the most fascinating thing to the viewer at home? And we'll all have a chat. And, two people might say A and three people might say B and one person might say D. And that's proof why we are so privileged to get all the information that we get and work out what the viewer does care about the most. But yeah, during Origin, it's also really hard because I think as a viewer last night, apart from the game, one of my favorite parts is just watching the entire coverage. You want to watch every interaction with the family members post game. You want to hear every person in the shed afterwards. You want to hear all the speeches that people have to say. So it's also remembering the side of footy that the fans don't always get to see.
It's very true.
And then that's probably the hardest part. So like the package that you did today, which was a wrap of the two hotels and everything that's sort of the fallout from this morning and a little bit of the shed stuff last night. It's remembering that the viewers actually want to see as much as they can from this morning because they haven't seen any of it. There's no live coverage of it from, 7 till 9 right through for 2 hours. We're just on a shot of these team hotels as people walk out. So I think it's really remembering that the viewer has a genuine care, not only for the game, but for the people who play the game and what they do.
No, very well said. And I suppose too, we can be stuck in the bubble sometimes too, right? Because we're so
Yeah.
close to it that we know because we're tuned into it 24/7 for our job, but that's not always necessarily what people want to hear or they might already hear or we think they've heard and they haven't heard it yet. So there is a lot that goes into it.
Yeah.
And then also, I mean, we covered 3 states this year, right? I mean, we had to go from
Yeah.
Brisbane to Perth to home in Sydney. Covering Perth was great. That stadium is absolutely incredible, and I hope they always go to Perth every 3 or 4 years. It's a great place. Suncorp, the Cauldron, of course, my home ground. You can't beat Suncorp. And it was amazing covering it up there. And then back in Sydney, when you get those aerial shots of a core stadium, it does sort of bring it out. I know that people can call it a graveyard and that it is quite dead. And when you only get 15,000 for an NRL game, but you get to see a core and Homebush and what that is supposed to be when you see a sold out stadium, right? And that's when you get the full experience and you're like, this is how good it can be. And on Origin, all those pubs around it are all full and you have the people streaming in and it's a shame you can't have things like that all the time, but that's when you go like, well, that's what a core is good for because you can't put 80,000 people anywhere else for rugby league really, besides the MCG really in Australia, and that's when a core really gets to shine. And the atmosphere, I imagine, out there was pretty good.
I was about to say, agreed. A core definitely doesn't get the best rap all the time. And it's hard, if you've got the Bulldogs and Souths playing, maybe the Tigers and the Titans on a regular season round, you're definitely not going to get 80,000 people there. But I was out at that stadium from about 2 p.m. yesterday afternoon, and from 3 p.m., the music was blaring. There were thousands of people around already, food trucks, the bars, people couldn't fit in already. So during that Origin atmosphere, it really is a whole different vibe. And it just, you felt different. You felt, we were all standing around, we were bopping our heads to the music, and you just, it's such an energetic feel, and you can't help but latch onto it because the hustle and the bustle and the noise and everything like that. So the atmosphere, I didn't stay for the game, but in the lead up hours earlier, it was really buzzing.
Yeah, and a core really does a great job with the light spectacular inside. Even on TV, it came across really good. The lights, the fire shows, everything they do. And Perth did that as well too. They had Wolf Mother as a pre-game. And I can't speak more highly of that Perth stadium. It's awesome. It's such like the Death Star out there in Perth, Lou. It's crazy. And the Cauldron is probably the one that actually needs a bit of updating now. I think Suncorp's probably heading that way where it is awesome and it's still a great venue, but the facilities in the next few years, that's probably one to keep an eye on because that is going to need a bit of an upgrade. And Brisbane's a growing population, so it'll be interesting anyway to see how that all goes down. And covering Origin Camp, obviously we touched on a little bit, but it is hard, right? Because I've got to go to the Blue Mountains. Josh Bristow, our Brisbane reporter, who we have on season ticket holders a bit, he's got to go to the Sunshine Coast. We've got to drive an hour and a half, and then you guys are back in the office trying to piece it all together. We're trying to keep you up to date. What's that challenge like when you've sort of got these roving reporters all around, and you're just trying to make sure we can all keep steering the ship in the right direction?
Yeah, I suppose the biggest challenge is just the time that we actually lose you and Bristow out of the office as well. It's not like we're just ducking out half an hour, quick presser, and then back, round trip, hour and a half, and you're door to door. Those Blue Mountains trips and the Sunshine Coast trips, we were losing you for the entire day. So you were out of the office by 7:30, 8 a.m. most mornings, and you weren't back until after your shift had ended, technically.
After my pie.
Yeah, after he always got his pie, except for that one day.
Yes.
But yeah, you sort of weren't back in the office until you were technically meant to be out of the office. So the real challenge is making sure we're all on the same page, and I think we're all really good at that. We would often have a phone call after each presser and just sort of debrief everything that was heard and make sure all the important points are going to be in that afternoon's package or whatnot. But I think the second thing is having a real clear plan. So a real clear plan of, okay, Dane's going to be in the Blue Mountains today. The press conference isn't until 12:45. By the time he digests everything that he just heard in that press conference, scripts his package, voices his package, because you also then want to show that a reporter was out in the Blue Mountains when we've, put so much effort to send you on that 90-minute drive to and from. You want to make sure that somewhere in your package there's a piece to camera showing where you were. You do all that and then you drive back. Like we said, you're then heading home. So it's really making sure that you've got a real clear plan of, okay, Dane's going to take care of the content, who's going to have time to cut his package back in the office. And I'll put my hand up, for the most part, it was never me. So thank you to all of our colleagues who would step in and get that cut. But yeah, you had to know who was doing what, because we would have a New South Wales package that needed to be sorted. We'd have a Queensland package that needed to be sorted. And then there's also so many little things that also have to be done. We don't only just file the 2 packages. We also provide content for Sky News and for other platforms. So every long form thing what we do, which is a package which can go for multiple minutes, we then also have a real short version that has to be available as well for Sky News to run in their bulletins, or our smaller updates to be able to run. So you got to make sure you know what's going to be happening for the day. And that's sometimes where the challenge would also come, because there would be days where we wouldn't find out what the plan was for the next day until really late that night.
Especially the Queenslanders. New South Wales was quite organised in the media this year, which was very nice. But I know Bristow struggled because Queensland did like to leave it to the night before, sometimes very late, to tell you what they were going to do the next day.
Yeah, and it throws a bigger spanner, I think, than some people think, because that could mean, changing the time that you would start work. And if we're not getting a release until 10 p.m. at night, but you are meant to be waking up at 4:30 to be in the office for a 5 o'clock start, you're not checking your phone at 10:30. You're probably in your 10th dream by that time. So the organisation actually plays a lot of a bigger part than what I think people may realise, because it's not just about, so the reporter has to be at that presser at that time. It's what time are they then coming to work, and what time are they leaving work, and what additional stuff do they have to do, and if that's not getting filed until this time, is it someone from our morning team who's going to take care of it, or if it's someone from our afternoon team? So it does pose a really big challenge, because it's the lead of in that 10-day build-up. Origin is, for the most part, the lead of every bulletin, whether it's NRL Tonight or just a normal news bully, because it's the biggest story in a 10-day period. So without that organisation, it can be so difficult to make sure. And there were times where training wasn't on until 5:30 and we're on air at 6 o'clock. So it's also thinking, how are we going to get this package cut and be on air at 6 p.m.?
100%. So what we're saying to everyone out there is it is a lot that goes behind the scenes, more than those 2-minute little stories or 30-second reads or little live cross. We're not just doing it off the cuff. There is a lot that goes into this, and we'd love to do even more, but there's only a certain amount of access that we get, right? Like they're pretty strict, especially each Origin time. They'll put up a player or two every day, not in the off days, but most days. And that's it. They do get us a big media day when they first go into camp where you can chat to just about every player. But it is sometimes hard. And I know you hear the old school journos like Buzz and that talk about how they were given way better access back in the day, but that's just not how things are. Things are very media managed and minded, and players are starting their own blogs. And, podcasts, that type of thing. So it's good that they're giving back. It does make our job a bit harder as well. But there is so much that go into it, right? And then you got people like Latrell Mitchell and Spencer Leniu, who are on self-imposed media bans. So we didn't hear from them at all. I know Spencer, I actually watched one of his vlogs on YouTube. He's built a little bit of a following. But it's a shame that he never spoke to us, right? And especially Latrell, like I've spoken about Latrell heaps in this podcast. I'm a massive fan. He's one of the biggest stars in the game. It would have been nice if you could just have a little chat, right?
I agree. And I think the hardest part about both those guys is they're actually genuinely really nice guys.
They are.
They're these tough, really brutal guys on the field, but off the field, they're probably two of the nicest NRL players you could have a conversation with. And I think that's the biggest shame, because it's not often that the people that you talk to off the field have a real sort of, just like you're chatting to a mate feel. There are times where it does feel very journo NRL player, and there isn't that, close relationship or rapport. So it's a shame that it was two players who do give such a great insight into what is going on in a camp or what is, happening on a field. I understand both their reasonings, and, it will be interesting to see, I don't know if Souths are going to get there given where they're on sitting on the ladder at the moment, but it will be really interesting to see if we get into finals footy and what happens with Spencer and at the Roosters, and if they do give us that little bit of access, because I think it would be a shame to go a whole season and not hear from a star like Spencer Leniu or Latrell Mitchell.
100%. And Spencer was still one of the biggest Origin storylines across those first two games without ever saying a word, because of the whole kickoff situation with Queensland, the way he revved up the crowd at Suncorp on the sidelines before he went on. And Latrell, we just didn't really hear much of it all. I mean, he had a really solid series, but we just didn't really get much from Latrell, which is, I reckon that's a big shame, because he's one of the biggest stars in the game, and we want to hear to him. Please talk to us, Latrell. Talk to me, mate. I'll be nice to you. I'm a big fan.
Come on, season ticket holders.
Yeah, that's right. I got a photo on my Instagram. I'm a big fan when he came to Cairns once, so I'm not even joking. Awesome, Lou. That was most of the things that I want to talk to you about from a media point of view. I did want to have a shout out to your colleague, Jake Duke, who did tell me before the series started, Dane, you don't really think Queensland will win a game this year, do you? And I did bring that up with Dukey in the office earlier, but yes, Jake, I did, and we did. We won the series, mate, Queenslander.
If there's one thing you watched today, aside from season ticket holders, it should be Dane's rat package that we were speaking about earlier. The smirk on his face when he speaks about New South Wales losing and Nathan Cleary, whether he comes back next year. True Queensland form, let me tell you that much. If you didn't know he was a Queenslander, you knew after that package.
I got told that by two separate people today. One was Channel 7 Jaleesa. She told me, I've been watching all morning, and Dane, you can tell Dane's very happy. The other was my mum. She called me after one of my crosses this morning and said, you can really tell how happy you are, son. So, look, Cheshire Cat, that's actually what she said. So, look, I'll take it. And that just leads
well
into...
deserved.
Thank you very much, Lou. And you do a great job there at NRL Tonight. And you did a great job pulling it out in the road and doing something different, which is always great in our industry. But before I want to let you go, I do just want to ask you, from a New South Wales point of view, does the dynasty talk need to stop now? And does New South Wales need to finally acknowledge that Queensland spirit is real and can't be taught?
No, absolutely not. That's not even a question.
Oh, I scripted that and everything.
You know what? I don't think it's that New South Wales don't get the spirit, and I don't think it's that they don't get Origin, but I just think things have gone on so many different levels from them, from one side to the other, that now I just don't know they know what to do anymore. Like, we make too many changes, we lose. Then we have an unchanged side, we lose. Like, I just think there's too much confusion.
It is one of those things, right? Because we talk about it all the time, you're blessed with talent. The talent pool is obviously way bigger for New South Wales and Queensland. Then you also top it off by winning game one in Queensland in enemy territory. Mm-hmm. It'd be hard not to get a little bit complacent in that situation when you really think everyone's saying, I mean, the New South Wales media probably does need to cool it with the dynasty talk, because that does come up so often after one. But I mean, obviously there was such a big chance it was going to be two in a row. But I think it's Queensland spirit that can't be taught, Lou. That's my answer.
Said like a true Queenslander.
Queenslander. All right, that's my last one for the day. Last one for the series. Lou Abihanna, thank you very much for joining us. You do an amazing job on NRL Tonight. For anyone who hasn't seen it, please tune in, because it is a great show. It gives you daily NRL news and everything you need to know. And you can sometimes see me too, which is always nice. Lou, thank you so much for joining us on Season Ticket Holders again.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Anytime. I hope the Sharks go well and that Fitzy fan club also does really well for you, Lou. I know you're a big fan. And now she's not talking to me. Guys, thanks a lot for listening. Season ticket holders now on TikTok too. So please follow us on TikTok, our Instagram, and thanks for everyone's support. We'll talk to you soon. Take care. Bye bye.